Hmm? Usually probably take it off up here. Yeah. Yes. Oh, one more.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order. I promised you Dr. Shane back this month. He got busy, and I'm filling in yet again, so my apologies for that. So let's call the meeting to order, call the roll.
Alford, Anthony, Birdsong, Edmondson, Larios, McDaniel, McQuiller, Patel, Rubio, Gambler, Smith, Tolan, Tucker, Woodruff.
All right, thanks everyone, appreciate that. We do have a forum. We'll dive right in for some comments from Megan Hunt, the engagement manager at Dell State. Megan, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me. All right, good afternoon, folks. I am here to just share a little bit about what is going on in the new Dell City Library. If you haven't visited yet, I highly encourage you to do so. It's a beautiful facility, more or less double the square feet that we've had for a long time, and also more than twice the public computers that we've had accessible to the public. So we're really proud of those things. We've been picking up traction really consistently. In March, we had an average door count of about 70 people a day. In May, that had just about doubled, and as of August, we're serving about 140, 150 people a day. So people are figuring out that we've moved down the street, and they're pleased with the new facility. So a couple of things that we've been up to. We had a partnership with the Regional Food Bank of Oklahoma this summer, and that's extended into the fall due to a COVID exemption. But what happened was we were able to hand out take-and-go meals to kids ages 0 through 17. So anyone who would have missed those school lunches that were free, any kiddo in the community who might be hungry, could come to the library and get their food. We strategically placed that at the back of our children's area, past every display and juicy looking book. And something I did not expect was that almost all of them left with library materials in hand. So we served over 1,200 meals so far from June 1st to present. And I would say that's been a huge success for us. Some other things that we are up to, of course, we're not programming in the traditional sense, but our takeaway kits and take-home programs have been a big hit. We recently devised a little life skills series for early childhood, and we had 25 of those kits put together that walked out the door in 2 business days. They went fast, but they had a really cute like little sneaker with a shoelace so the kids could learn to tie a shoe. Some fine motor skills activities in there. They were really cute and the customers were excited about them. For grade school kids, we've got science shorts going on. If any of you have met Josh Jordan, our children's librarian, he continues to just amaze with his amazing scientific skills. He's so engaging with the kids, and he is doing small groups outdoors to do his science programming continuing into fall. For teenagers, we've got a personal finance kit coming out shortly, and that's going to talk about starting to think about setting up a savings account, saving for college, how to apply for the FAFSA, things like that. So in addition to our very popular Dungeons and Dragons, we're also going to try and educate them a bit. For adults, recently, I think this was a couple of weeks ago, we released a bullet journaling kit, which was also very popular. If you're not familiar with that, it's just a form of journaling that uses fun colored markers, and you can make different graphs and things. I even picked up one of those kits myself because I was so enthused. Lastly, we are still luckily doing outreach in the community, not to the extent that we have in the past, but we are still maintaining our relationship with our school district, with our latchkey programs after school, as well as neighborhood groups. They're doing Neighbors Night Out throughout the fall, and we're going out to public parks and just touching base with people, letting them know we're not scary and their fines have disappeared, so hopefully they will come back to see us soon. Does anyone have any questions about Del City? Yes?
I have one question.
Of course.
I think you're the only library that has that little station that is for parent guardian and a child little station.
Yes.
Is it being used as?
I would love to talk about those, Beth. Thank you. 2 of our public computer stations are very special. They are essentially adult caretaker workstations. So we jokingly called them baby cages. Of course, not in front of customers, just to each other. But it is a playpen built into a cubicle with a computer. So they've been wildly popular, especially if you've got a squirmy 18-month, 3-year-old child, and you're trying to fill out a resume or a job application or just pay some bills online. In the future, we will have toys in the little cubbies for the kiddos to play with. That's not happening for now, but they have been popular, yeah, and we've received some really good feedback from customers. Yeah. Thank you all for your time.
Megan, thank you. And extend our thanks and appreciation to the staff at Del City for doing a great job.
Thank you.
All right, Marie, shall we roll the video to celebrate our service certificates for this month? We got 1 full year. Barbara Freeman, please come forward to the microphone. And as you're coming forward, I'll just simply remind you that we allot 3 minutes per person for our public comment. So thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, Director White, board members. My name's Barbara Freeman. I'm a lifelong resident of Oklahoma City, mother of 8 and grandmother of 10 ethnically diverse grandchildren, including Hispanic, African, and German, with future grandchildren of Vietnamese descent, I hope. I am here to express my concerns regarding books I found in the board book section of Southern Oaks Library. On a recent visit with my 2-year-old granddaughter, I was surprised to see boards in that section that appeared to be way beyond the scope of a toddler. I followed the process to request 2 books be removed from that collection, and my request was denied. I would like to explain my concerns and ask for reconsideration of this denial. Early childhood development professionals define board books as those books intended for ages birth to 3 years old, with the intent, number 1, to protect from destruction by exploring with the mouth, number 2, to help with fine motor skills by turning pages on their own, and number 3, to allow for texture and sound for multisensory stimulation, which, if included in a book, might extend the age range to 4. My concerns are regarding the following books. A is for activist. The library's collection division stated in their denial letter that this book is advertised for 3 to 7-year-olds, according to the publisher, which indicates that this should not be a board book. It contains words far above the comprehension and, more importantly, the context of young children. For example, questioning coercion, querying qualities counter false assertions, cooperating cultures, creative counter to corporate vultures. New words do need to be presented to expand a child's vocabulary, but they need to be within the ability of the child to understand their meanings. These words are far from a 3-year-old's ability to understand and are more likely to cause misunderstanding of their appropriate use. The second is our skin. A child will absorb only the parts that they understand. At age 2, this would be the color white, the words better, smarter, prettier. There's a huge risk to a very young child of mistaking the context, thinking that white is better, smarter, prettier, or that all people believe this, or that if the child is not white, they don't possess these descriptors. At this age, their thinking is very concrete, and they will not understand the very abstract concept of race and inequality. This book, no matter its intent, is risking a child of any skin color to have misconceptions that will be detrimental to them in becoming productive members of society. Introducing these images and stories at an age too young to comprehend is dangerous. It might well be an appropriate book for middle school and older, but should never have been published as a board book. What happened to board books that draw a child in? Pictures of kittens, bunnies, laughing and sleeping babies. That's what my toddler grandchildren enjoy. Allow these little children to be little children. Please reconsider this decision or direct me to the pathway for appeal regarding this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Springer. We appreciate your time and for coming down and visiting with us today.
Thank you.
All right. We will move to the consent docket. Before we take action on the consent docket, I'd like to invite Tom Caraway forward. Tom is, I believe, our new insurance representative, and I'm going to ask him to make a few brief comments about the coverages that are being provided by insurance.
Thanks, Brandon. David, if you'll come up. My name is Tom Caraway, and David and I have been selected to work with the insurance and risk management program for property liability insurance. And you'll find a premium comparison document. David, I'm going to let you speak about that. Sure. What we did in the marketing aspect.
Sure. As you'll see here, what we did, we structured this document. You can see a comparison of the current premiums that are in place with CNA. At the very far left, 2000, 2001, and to the right, you're going to see our marketing. We reached out to a global group of insurance carriers to position the metropolitan library system to find the best coverage, the best premium we could. You'll see from left to right, We have Travelers, Chubb, CNA, and Zurich. When everything kind of fell to the bottom, reviewed coverage, deductibles, things of that nature, looks like Travelers offers the most competitive premium for the coverage that's currently in place for the library system. Moving down, the coverage for workers' comp, you'll see Comp Source, current vendor. To the next column going left to right, Comp Source, Travelers, Zurich, Chubb, Compress. Those are the other insurance markets we marketed to. And as you guys will see, there was definitely some savings there on the workers' comp. It looks like Comp Source is probably, then again, another vendor in which we would recommend to the library. Falling down, the next lines of coverage, fiduciary, directors and officers, EPL. Current carrier is Philadelphia. The market's been challenging, so we've had some delays in getting some of these things, but we did finally get some information from the Philadelphia. As you'll see, their renewal figures also went to Travelers and to Chubb. Let's see. There we go. Next line of coverage, we have sexual misconduct, current policies with Lloyd's. There was this considerable jump in that premium this year. It's been a very, very tough market. But we went globally. We went to London. We went to a lot of different markets, and these are the premiums that we brought forth. The next line of coverage, which we all probably know is something that's more and more important each and every day, is cyber. Currently, there is a $1 million limit in cyber. Current carrier is Indian Harbor. The underwriting this renewal period and across the board in cyber has taken a dramatic change than it has in the past. In the past, you get 3 bits of information, pretty much get a quote. Now we're going into a lot more specific things about your MFA, your controls in place, things of that nature. The Insurca team worked with the staff, with Sheree and her team, IT team. We asked a lot of pointed questions. They were very, very engaged in the application process of answering questions from the marketplace. And so we've got some carriers here that have kind of participated. Some have offered limits of $1 million, $3 million, $5 million. Some of this stayed true to the $1 million. So Indian Harbor offered a renewal, as you see there. Then 3 other carriers, CFC, Cent, and Cowbell. The next page, if I could scroll down, would be our recommendations to the commission. We're looking, and we make a recommendation to kind of move carriers from CNA to Travelers. Travelers offered some very, very broader coverage. One thing, the point of notion that's very, very important to point out in that is Travelers offered $30 million in flood coverage at numerous facilities. Currently, it's around $1 million, so a lot broader coverage. The risk control, loss control services will definitely be very, very important, in addition to what the Insurca team will bring to staff. So here it kind of lines out our recommendation to move from CNA to Travelers. And then there's one item here, fiduciary, we just kind of got the last minute, but fiduciary coverage is, the premiums could be up to around $22,000. It shouldn't be any more than that. We're just putting the final finishing touches on that. But other than that, we'd be open to taking any questions that you guys may have.
Yes, ma'am.
On page 13 and 15, lines 13 and 14 respectively, the address, I think it's 2400 or 2420 East Oklahoma Drive. Shouldn't both of those indicate some apartment or some other thing?
Which property was that again?
The one on Oklahoma Drive.
Yes.
It's on it's page 13, number 13, and page
Yes.
13, number 14. Both of those, I think, could be some apart.
You had several of us trying to figure out where that was. We
Yeah.
we had some property, we didn't know what it was,
That's
that
what I-
was overall, so it turned out to be the other part.
Can I ask, if you're going to raise a question, can you speak louder or go to the mic, please? Because it's hard for the people coming in online to be able to hear what is being said. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yep, got an answer.
Could you explain more about what's included in the cyber coverage, specifically about when you
going to come up with a slide that has more blanks than we can imagine. This is the cyber slide that we presented to the executive team. And cyber insurance includes the payment of ransom, which is really odd because we're having claims exactly for the amount of cyber insurance in the form of ransom, because the cyber criminals find out how much limit you have when they do the hack. So this is the variety of coverages that start from top to bottom, and the reason that CFC looks better is generally their deductibles are lower or their limits are higher. So you have everything from funds transfer fraud to corporate identity theft to telephone hacking to legal regulatory costs, IT forensic costs. All of that is included in a cyber policy. So it's not just one coverage for ransom. It's actually up to 15 coverage parts. And so this is how all the coverage parts lay out. And we're seeing more cyber claims than anything else.
It's a multiple element. Things are deductible element.
Yeah, so you can't have a multiple element with more than one deductible. You can end up with multiple deductibles in the same cyber event. I've seen 3. I haven't seen where there's like 10 or 12, but I've seen 3. I mean, depending on the size of the cyber event, you can have a significant amount of deductibles.
So you're saying it's not an aggregate $1 million limit, it's each line has a...
It's an aggregate limit, but it can be a per line deductible. So we're buying $1 million of limit, but you could have more than one deductible applied. Most of the time, honestly, most of the time we have one deductible. The underwriters just take one deductible and determine it.
So it's $1 million covered, period.
Yes. And there's options at 3 and 5. I mean, there's higher options available. What you can also see in cyber is 1 month you'll have a cyber instance where you're paying legal and regulatory costs for pulling credit reports. The next month you'll have another cyber instance. The third month you'll have another cyber instance. It's not possible to say any longer that there is an immune type of business from cyber. At one point, it was hospitals, banks, and schools. Now it is everybody. Everybody is a cyber target. Although the library isn't, it doesn't have some of the detailed information that other companies have. Libraries haven't been a tremendous target that we've seen, but it is extremely important. And show them the premium option, just to give an idea.
Brian, I've got a question for Larry.
Okay, go ahead.
While they're pulling that up. Yeah. Larry, what do you see the risk to the library from a cyber incident?
The biggest risk we run into is a couple of fold. We have the possibility that someone could integrate into our financial system. We have the possibility that someone could get into payroll system. And we also have the possibility that someone could get into our customer record database. Those are probably the 3 biggest. And if I'm missing something, Ann, please let me know. I think those are probably the biggest. We have taken a great degree of security in place. We have limited number of VPN access. Many of our accounts have double logins, double passwords. We have done as much as we can do to try to put as much distance between us and the outside world on these systems as possible, but I couldn't sit here and tell you that it's absolutely foolproof. The customer data that we would have does not carry things like credit card numbers and social security numbers and those kind of things, but it does contain other identifier information that could conceivably be used for identity fraud. Our financial system, of course, has everything in it that we do financially. Our employee records does have a great deal of confidential information in it, very personal identifier information. You know, we have Social Security numbers, we have medical histories, we have a great degree of things that we really don't want the world having access to. We keep the Paycom system, which is our HR system. It is not, I can't sit here and tell you it's foolproof, but there are multiple layers of access and authentication that you have to go through to get into it. Those would probably be the biggest three in areas of concern.
So those areas, the tricky thing about cyber, and I won't go on it too far, but it's almost kind of like workers' comp when you don't have safety on the front end. So it's really more about what is the library doing to protect data on the front end, and then a cyber policy is just, you know, do we need legal representation or do we have to pay a ransom or something else if we get into this situation? So the premium's not huge. I understand the coverage, but you know, just want to make sure that we're understanding, thinking about, you know, if somebody did get in and get into our financial system, what damage would that do? They can't move funds because I hope we have dual authentication and multiple people that have to approve
Yes.
wire transfers, ACH, all of those.
We have a great degree of internal controls when it comes to fiscal responsibility.
So, yeah, so I think we've got things pretty well isolated and contained. I just want us to make sure that we're considering what exactly we're buying with this coverage and make sure that we're doing protection on the front end and not relying on this policy to do protection.
We are not sitting back and waiting for this policy to save us. We are taking very proactive steps to ensure that access to information is regulated and controlled to the people who need access to it. Not everyone has access to everything in the system, even as an employee. So we do have access controls in place. We do have protocols for security in place. We do review that. We had a period here a couple of months ago where we were getting a lot of activity from overseas, people attempting to try to get into our systems. And when we discovered that that was the case, they weren't getting anywhere, but we wanted to make sure they stayed not getting anywhere. So we added additional layers of security on top of it to make sure that we were making it even more difficult. And we have not had a breach that we are aware of. I'm sorry? We had one. Okay. 3 years ago? Okay.
So like I said, that was, the question wasn't about it was exactly that, is the insurance policy is,
Something bad has already happened if we're digging into a cyber policy.
Right.
that was just a key up.
And then second thing to you guys, you have information on the limits on the D&O?
Yeah, so the limits on D&O are $3 million, which includes employment practices liability. The fiduciary limit is a $7 million limit, which is actually a very high limit for fiduciary. And so it's separated out for your D&O, EPLI, which is your employment practices claims, at a $3 million, and then the fiduciary is written at a $7 million.
Is this A, B, and C, all sides?
Yes.
Identified, non-identified, and
Right.
all that?
Yes. So you have side A, side B, and you do have in your D&O, you do have an entity portion of coverage too, that you don't always see in private, but you do in a nonprofit D&O.
Brian, do you know, are we considered directors and endorsed to the library's D&O policy?
Yes.
Commissioners?
I understand.
Is that a named endorsement or is it just by title?
By title.
I think it's title.
It is. Yes, sir.
Quick question. Larry, do we have a on-staff cybersecurity person that has the requisite certifications, or is that something that is not deemed necessary?
We have folks who are experts in network working, in implementing the security, but we do not have a dedicated cybersecurity position on staff. All of our IT staff provide access and coverage in terms of providing security to devices and access of accounts, but we do not have a one person dedicated to it. No, sir.
We're using outside resources.
We use outside resources. We have outside evaluation of our system.
Any other questions before we move on?
Sorry.
Yep.
Don't mean to hog the
No, no.
conversation, but why a $7 million fiduciary limit, but only a $3 million D&O limit?
So that's prior to us coming into review, and it probably has to do with the pension plan and the way the pension plan assets, the size of the pension plan assets, and someone at some point believed that those assets needed their own limit and their own coverage. This is a high limit. It is somewhat unique to have a limit set apart from your D&O EPLI and this high limit, but there was probably an identification at some point. Somebody said, hey, as a fiduciary, I want more limits. And fiduciaries should have, because this coverage is for the fiduciaries of the plan and the various plans. And so those fiduciaries should have it. But there's not a formula to come up with that limit. You don't do X times Y and get Z, and that's your formula. It just was, that was the limit.
Yeah, I've never seen a $7 million.
I haven't either. I mean,
Well, the way that that pension plan is structured, you would be hard pressed to say who's really responsible.
oh, okay.
It's two named people, two named members of the commission and another, by virtue of their office, and another person from the staff. So it is a very odd structure. Having done that for a number of years, I think that it was very difficult to even try to understand what we were doing, why we were doing it the way it was structured. It was not a commission activity. It was a pension board that was separated from the commission.
Right.
That, I think, explains maybe the level of concern.
Okay.
And then 10 years ago, it was a much larger plan now.
Yeah, yes, that's correct. It's a smaller plan now. And so, that's a good question. We do not see a lot of fiduciary claims. They're fairly rare, but when you see one, they're usually excess fee claims. And in this case, there's not an excess fee option really. Underwriters are concerned about that. When there were more assets, it probably created more of an issue.
Nancy, is there a reason we need to keep it at $7 million?
I'm not there anymore, so I don't know how much they're trying to, that's probably in excess of what's,
12.
Yeah,
That's probably.
But you don't write what's in the plan.
Right.
Yeah, you did not, this is where it gets confusing, because plan assets and insurance limits don't have to be the same.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be crazy.
Sorry.
It's probably worth it.
Yeah, can we review it? Let's see what it would be to knock it down to 3 or 5.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then do you have some information on increasing the D&O limit from 3 to 5? 3 seems low, and 7 seems really high.
So we did work on that. We didn't finalize the premiums on the 5 because of the 3, but we can absolutely, we can do that. We can do that really quick. That's not, we can smooth it out to a 5. Now, I would still keep the fiduciary separate because of the way it's been in the past, but it really doesn't have to be that way. Yeah, we can look at smooth limits on that.
You adopt the way it is and then amend it.
How do you all do that? If somebody adopts it the way it is, and then how do you want to do that?
For a new.
Yes.
We have a contract meeting.
and we approved subject to, well,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed.
Yeah, because that's in there already for the.
Right, so, okay. So you've done it on the fiduciary, you haven't done it on the D&O. And to increase the D&O, you would need to have a not to exceed number. And I would, you can't guess a D&O premium. I'm old. I've been doing this a long time. These are hard to guess. But if you were to say, if you were to look at a $22 million, first of all, the underwriter's going to want to, why are we increasing? I mean, is there a problem? Have we identified an issue? So, but if you were to look at Travelers, and we went to them and discussed what was going on, and you were to say not to exceed 25,000, and I think it would be less than that, then you could do that, we could work with those numbers.
I don't think you tell the travelers not to exceed, because then you get them a number.
Well, that's right, you can't, yeah, and of course, all these things are recorded
What
now.
we're saying is we could approve it contingent upon it not exceeding $25,000.
We want as much D&O as we can get for $25,000.
I would just say to all the other commissioners, this is very important to me, and it should be very important to you.
Absolutely.
This is where our coverage comes in if somebody sues us as commissioners for any sort of malfeasance, anything. This is the policy that protects us.
Right, it's malfeasance, misfeasance, it's that bad decision, lack of decision, this is what you get.
And it doesn't have to be any intent.
No intent at all.
All right, so any other questions? So what I've heard is that we will have a vote, or let me stop right there. Any other issues on the consent docket? Okay. Then what I would entertain is a motion to approve the consent docket subject to a upward revision in the D&O portion of our insurance policy and not exceed $25,000 on the fiduciary on
With $5,000,
5 million, right.
And at the same point, we're hearing that you want to reduce the fiduciary, looking at the reducing the fiduciary to that same 5 million.
I believe so.
Okay.
So is, all right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Maria, would you call the roll?
This is for the entire consent document.
The entire consent document
Okay.
with the, the subject change to the insurance coverage. Or the insurance coverage. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Alford,
Aye.
Anthony,
Yes.
Birdsong,
Aye.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Larios,
Aye.
Jackson,
Yes.
Mon,
Yes.
McCaleb,
Yes.
McDaniel,
Yes.
McQuillard,
Yes.
Morgan,
Yes.
Patel,
Yes.
Rubio,
Yes.
Scambler,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Tolan,
Aye.
Woodruff.
All right.
All right, we approve the consent docket. Now we'll move on to section 4 for discussion, consideration, and possible action report on the recommendation from the Finance Committee. Finance Committee met earlier this week to review the 21-22 fiscal year final budget. Craig, any comments on that budget and the recommendation from Finance Committee?
My only comment would be, as you said, the finance committee did meet, Sharice, appreciate going through the highlights of the budget. We did have some positive changes from a revenue standpoint. Ad valorem taxes came in higher than originally anticipated. And there were some positive changes on the expense side, some pluses and minuses, I would say. Net, budget stayed right around the same, but increased to the reserve fund of approximately 3.4 million. So if there's any detail that you want to provide, Sharice, I think this would be a great time, but our recommendation from the finance committee would be to accept the budget as proposed.
Thank you, Craig. Sharice, any additional comment from your perspective? Yeah, why don't we err on the side of information, providing information, and just do a high-level test?
Certainly, because we haven't had enough numbers so far this meeting. So we'll go over more numbers. And I'll just go over real briefly, just kind of changes to the revenue schedule, your page 5. And then I'll follow up with changes that are noted in the separate document, the preliminary to final document that highlights just the changes on the expenses as well, and then I'll take any questions. But as Craig mentioned, we had, when we proposed the preliminary budget, we did that based on prior year ad valorem, so that was a zero-based increase. The county assessor came back with a 2.59% assessed value increase, so that ended us with a 38.6 million and a 2.59% increase overall. For that top row, the ad valorem taxes, in the second section, those stayed similar to what was presented in the preliminary. Fines we have left at a net 30,000 due to the fine-free. We've reduced those revenues pending those changes. We always budget state aid at 90%. So you'll see that 142,000 there with 140 in fines. Below, from the preliminary budget, we got our final numbers for the year, because this whole section is carried forward. So whatever we end up with in our actuals, that's what carries forward into this current year budget. I had estimated 1.5 million into the ad valorem collected into the reserves, and we ended up with 2.2. So 2.5, sorry. I had estimated 1.4 on the back year taxes, and that came in at 1.6. So that was a 1.1 million increase in that section as well. There's some odds and ends changes throughout the miscellaneous income, and then the other big change was in lapse. So we had estimated 6.6 in lapse, and that came back at 7.4 million in lapse. Those have got an $842,000 increase there. So overall, that gave us the 50.747 in total projected revenue. We have our prior year reserves as 21 million. That gives our total projected budget for this year at 71,838,000. Any questions on just the revenue side?
The 2.2 million reserves, are you earmarked it? How are you gonna hold it?
The 21 million?
No, the ad valorem, you had extra, right?
Right, no, the 3.4, overall this year we're contributing from the revenue sources, we're contributing an additional 3.4 into our reserves.
Right, and when you put it into the reserves, are you just using it as a reserve, or have you earmarked it for long-term or something?
Well, we'll look at that in the long-range plan, and that's usually how those funds are distributed through capital projects. We always want to cover 10 years worth of capital projects and renovations, carpeting, those big capital items, so that fund sits there. And then every year through the operating process, we either contribute to the reserves or we pull from the reserves to fund a project. So that 3.4 million will go sit there for the year, and then we'll look at what we have in upcoming, especially when we're going to go review our long-range plan again. We'll be looking at how we're going to contribute those funds across the system in the next 10 years. But those funds don't get used this year. Okay. Any other questions on revenue sources? Okay. So then I'll go to that second document that has the changes, and I'll just highlight the big changes. Like we talked about, we had our, in the salaries, wages, and benefits, those are budgeted based on position. We didn't have any changes in adding or removing seats or positions from the preliminary to final, so all of those numbers stayed the same with the exception of retirement. Our retirement plan, we have the defined contribution plan and we have the defined benefit plan. We're just talking a bit about the funds that are in the defined benefit plan there. We seek an actuarial assistance on what we contribute to that plan every year. For the preliminary, I'd estimated $750,000, waiting on the results from the actuary. They came in at $554,000, so we're able to put $195,000 back and reduce that budget. In maintenance and operations and the contractual services sections, we added some funds to do some landscaping and some Midwest City LED upgrades. That was $119,000. We have the, under utilities, you'll see a reduction of $231,000. That is primarily due to the E-rate discounts that we get. So when we budget telephone and internet services, we have, in the preliminary, it's the full budget. And then between preliminary and final, we get the numbers from our E-rate discount, so we incorporate those discounts here. And that's about $250,000. We also had information technology services line item there. We added $229,000. $150,000 of that is for a document management system. And then there's some upgrades and some different IT services that we've added for that total. So in all, in contractual services, we had an increase of just $145,000. On commodities, not much change there. We did have, again, in IT, technology, and equipment in the capital outlays. We added access controls and security upgrades for Ralph Ellison and Northwest libraries. And then for a small ad for Edmond for that $341,000. Below you'll see in capital improvements a $237,000 increase, and that was for lighting controls for downtown and HVAC and lighting controls for Northwest. So that was $237,000. Overall, throughout the whole budget, we had a $542,000 increase, and then you'll see the capital reserves to absorb most of that increase. We had a change. We had in the preliminary budget, we had said $1 million was our contribution level into the reserves, and with the additional ad valorem receipts and other revenue sources coming in, we're now able to bump that up to $3.4 million, so an additional $2.4 million from preliminary to final. Any questions? Okay. Thank you much.
All right, thank you, Cherise. With that, this is a motion being brought forward by the Finance Committee. Does not require a motion or a second, so I'll ask for your call roll.
Alford.
Aye.
Anthony.
Yes.
Birdsong.
Yes.
Edmondson.
Yes.
Jackson.
Yes.
Larios.
Aye.
Mon.
Aye.
McCaleb.
Yes.
McDaniel.
Yes.
McQuillard.
Yes.
Morgan.
Yes.
Patel.
Yes.
Rubio.
Yes.
Scambler.
Aye.
Smith.
Yes.
Tolan.
Aye.
Woodruff.
Aye.
All right. Section 5.1, Emily Williams and Kristen Williamson, going to give us a little update on summer reading.
They're joining us from Zoom. So.
All right, zooming in.
Hi, everyone. We wanted to provide our final summer reading report. I'm Emily Williams, and I'm the Teen Services Manager in the Outreach and Engagement Services Department.
And I'm Kristen Williamson, and I'm the Children's Services Manager in the Outreach and Engagement Services Department. We're going to start off with why summer reading is important. For one thing, it is the biggest program that we do every year. It runs from June 1st to July 31st. And summer reading allows students a way to stay engaged in learning over the summer months. It promotes reading for fun and enjoyment. It's a community tradition for a lot of our families, and they look forward to doing this every year. We've actually have records going back showing that we've done summer reading for at least 90 years and possibly longer. Our goal is to develop and support a community of readers. And as part of that, we all work together towards a community goal every year of how many points earned so that we are able to pay back through our Read It Forward program, which Emily will talk a little bit about here in a minute.
A couple of highlights, how things went this summer. Because of COVID, our program continued to look slightly different. We kept some of last year's program modifications to keep it simple and as easy as possible for both staff and customers. We had one goal level with the same prizes for all ages. We shifted prize pickup to August because when we were planning the program, we weren't quite sure what this past summer would look like. We set our community goal at 8 million points, which we reached the last week in July. Because our community read enough to reach this goal, we were able to make a Read It Forward donation of 2,300 bonus books funded by the Friends to restore OKC in Northeast Oklahoma City. We also did our very first virtual teen volunteer program. We had 52 teens volunteer 721 hours of service.
Some other highlights from this summer: in addition to coordinating the reading program, Outreach and Engagement Services also facilitated more than 240 virtual events for all ages in partnership with the Science Museum Oklahoma, the Oklahoma City Museum of Art, the Oklahoma Contemporary Arts Center, and the Arts Council of Oklahoma City. So some of those programs were Neighborhood Arts, which was done online and also outdoors at the Myriad Gardens and Scissortail Park. The Oklahoma Contemporary Arts Center kits, which were really popular. And then a number of outdoor programs done at libraries such as story times and STEAM programs that would allow our customers to actually participate in person outdoors. Another service that we offered this summer was the summer meals that were offered at 6 different locations. Ralph Ellison Library has done this for a few years, but this is the first year we've been able to expand that. So at those 6 locations, which include El Monte, Bethany, Capitol Hill, Del City, as Megan had mentioned earlier, Midwest City, and Ralph Ellison, during the months of June and July, we were able to serve 8,114 meals to 262 unique children. In addition, thanks to some waivers through the USDA, 5 of those locations were able to extend that program into August and September. Summer reading is definitely a team effort, and the steering committee and multiple subcommittees handled all the communications, staff engagement, communicating out to schools and other community organizations. And so I really would like to extend my thanks to all the people that served on the committees, because without them, we would not be able to do all of this work. And one thing I think that Emily mentioned was prize pickup was from August 1st to August 31st. And some of the libraries, because our meeting rooms weren't being used for programs, were able to create fun, kind of like Scholastic Book Fair style pickups for people to come in and select their prizes. So that was a really fun addition this year.
Because prize pickup was delayed until August, we're coming to you at the September Commission meeting with our final report instead of August as usual. You have some of the highlights up there on your screen. We had 12,811 participants. We had almost 11 million minutes read, which was very exciting. So that's a 69% increase in participation and a 44% increase in points earned from last year, which, 2020, we were just figuring out how to do pandemic summer reading. So this year we were able to improve those numbers quite a bit. We also had quite a bit of great feedback from customers. But if anyone has any questions, hopefully we can hear you from a microphone, but please feel free to ask. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Appreciate it. Outstanding. All right, we'll move on to the library usage report. And Larry, I'll just ask you to roll from that into your executive director report.
Okay, thank you. Were there any questions related to the library usage data for the month? Yes, ma'am.
I don't know exactly where it falls. Are we tracking any of the accounts that had forgiveness of fines and if they are now currently being used?
I don't think as of yet, no.
Okay.
But that is something that we can look at. We have a number of other things we're looking at in terms of benchmarking, where we were in terms of number of cards being accessed, number of items being searched. We're also looking at hold ratios and hold time to see if returning materials may be dragging that down a little bit. So we're going to be monitoring that through the course of the year of this pilot project to see how we're doing with that. So we're going to compare, we'll have a couple of comparative points to help us in terms of, how many overdues are we getting? How long is it taking to get books back? Are patrons experiencing any delay in getting things? Those are the benchmarks we have so far, but we would certainly look at how many cards have been activated due to the change.
Larry, can you, from time to time, give us updates on that, what you're seeing throughout this next year?
Yes, ma'am.
Will you break it down also by area? Because I know that there was a discussion that some of the areas rack up the biggest fines, but some of the areas have accounts that they had more fines per account, higher account fines, than some areas as a whole just,
In sheer volume?
yes.
Yes. Yes, we have that set up and we can run that. Our numbers are returning a little more back to normal. We still have some room to go to get back to pre-COVID time, which would be approximately February of 2019. So our numbers are getting closer to being normal. So we will continue to monitor that. Any other questions related to usage data? No? We're good? Okay. The next part of the agenda, which is the Executive Director's Report. I have included my report. There's one thing that I want to, if I can find it, I had it marked. Well, bless you. We are reaching out to the election board to try to get us back to where we were before the recent administrative review. One of our staff members, Jessica Gonzalez, is the person who coordinates our voter outreach program in terms of voter registration month and those kinds of things. And as she was preparing for this month's activity, we discovered when we started interacting with the voting office staff that there had been a change in consideration or a change in understanding of what the library could do in that process. The new interpretation really doesn't give us a lot of room to be able to do much. We had the possibility of trying to do new activities in terms of providing customers with stamps to help get their applications in. There's the gist of it is that there's been a reinterpretation about who can handle the voter registration forms. And they have a different understanding now. And so we're trying to learn what that new understanding is and be in compliance with it. But we also want to try to continue our tradition and our practice of trying to have people register to vote as much as possible. So that's going to be kind of an ongoing situation as we're able to understand. And we're going to try to work with them where we can to find a workaround to it so that we can be more engaged in the process. We don't complete forms for people. We don't tell people how to vote. We don't do those things. But we do provide access to the forms and help people get them printed and returned. And that's where the changes occurred. Their interpretation says that we can't do that now. So it's much more up to the customer to be able to do that. Many of our customers have challenges in getting the form completed. Some of them have never used a computer. Some of them have never registered to vote for. And so it does take a little assistance at times to help people be able to complete the forms and get everything, the application submitted, and have it be officially and successfully accepted. And so we're going to have to better understand what our options are so that we can adjust our operations accordingly, so that we can be in compliance. Were there any other questions related to the executive director's report?
You look like you've been a busy man the past month.
It's quite possible, but it's kind of reflective of the entire organization.
You're having meetings, there are other people who are having meetings with you. So
We're
you're involving a lot of people.
We are involving a lot of people. Part of what I feel is important about the library is that it's connected and integrated to the community we serve. We have to have their involvement, and they don't always come and knock on our door. My grandfather used to tell me that opportunity didn't always knock. Sometimes it stood outside the door in dirty overalls and looked like work. And so I'm kind of the notion that we don't stand back and wait for people to discover that they have a need of us and come to us. I'm of the mind that we go to them and tell them what we can do and have them go, oh, cool. I didn't know you did that. I got asked a couple of weeks ago when I was in the dentist by the dental assistant, what was the library going to do when books weren't a thing? And so I used it as an outreach moment and explained what all the library does in terms of collections and services and programmings and English as second language and citizenship courses and all the different things that we do. And they were utterly amazed at what the library does. We are down a little in staff right now. Actually, we're down a lot in staff because of COVID and other activities. But it is a very hard-working group of people we have, and we have a lot of people who are pulling their fair share of weight and more to make things work. So it's those staff members that are doing that are really responsible for all the stuff you see on that page.
Awesome, thanks, sir. All right, any comments from commission members? Yes, ma'am.
With respect to the comment that was made by the public, first of all, if there, I assume that as a staff review is done without respect to another commission involved.
Correct.
And if in fact there's an appeal, is there an appeal process? And if so, does that go to a public service committee at all?
The current policy and procedure on it is that there is a staff review. That staff consists of the head of collection services, also the head of acquisitions. It is then reviewed by public services staff. That review is then forwarded to me. I apply the policies as prescribed in the collection development policy. The official review process is stops the review process at the executive director. There is no formal written appeal process in it, and the commission is generally not included in the review process.
Okay, I was just trying to understand that, because I think there might be some concerns about that, if in fact the commission, if at no point the commission is engaged ever, I appreciate that, because we don't want to be in the position of choosing books. That's not our job. On the other hand, if we're
we can explore options if you want.
I think her comments were not taken with any degree of anything other than just concern, and I think we are obligated to respond about why, in fact, if in fact staff felt like it was appropriate, why.
We did provide that information along with a copy of the review process. But we can explore if you want.
I mean, yeah, I think that would be good. I would appreciate seeing that.
All right.
I'm not trying to ever be in a position of choosing or not choosing books, but I think that if there is a concern raised, we need to be, as the commission needs to be able to have at least the ability to say, can you do it again?
Any other comments? Okay. Suggestions for future agenda items, we touched on one, possibly, if there are others, please, forward those. Our next meeting, October 21, 3:30 p.m. Looks like we're back here. Southern Oaks to be our host. With that, stand adjourned.
Correct.